Welcome to the Sherpa Chalet on Mount Podcastia, where it's time for podcast picks with Jim the Podcast Sherpa. You'll get to hear about podcast recommendations for your podcast playlist, along with occasional interviews with other podcasters and video hosts. Now waiting for you is your host, Jim the Podcast Sherpa. He's just like you imagined. But don't worry, we'll make it up to you somehow.
Hi, I'm Burt Reynolds. Even though I've been dead for 7 years, I figured now was as good a time to loan my voice to some AI thing. This way, I don't have to see the Sherpa in person. Anyway, it's a mini episode this week featuring something called Sherpa Samples. Hopefully not the samples I think it is. If my agent is alive, I might have to kill them.
Welcome to the Sherpa's Podcast Picks. It's the podcast about, podcasts. And now, coming to you from Mount Podcastia, here's your host who wonders what's on your podcast playlist, Jim the Podcast Sherpa.
Hello there, rebels of the Sherpalution, and welcome to Podcast Picks with Jim the Podcast Sherpa. That would be me, Jim the Podcast Sherpa, coming to you from Sherpaloo Studios here in the Sherpa Chalet, high atop Mount Podcastia, where I overlook the millions and millions of podcasts that are out there. And it's a mini episode. You know, it's been a while since I've actually had a solo episode to talk about podcasts, and that exactly is what I'm going to do. Why the long wait? Well, we are at the halfway point in our season, and my life lately has been taking some crazy turns, and I just have not had the time to listen to a lot of new podcasts. But I figured this is perfect. Let's listen to some podcasts for people who don't have a lot of time to listen to podcasts. So everything that's coming up in this Sherpa Samples episode is under 25 minutes. How do you like that? And it's coming to you right about now.
Now it's time for Sherpa Samples. Got a podcast for the Sherpa to sample? Let us know and we'll mention your name on the show.
Yes, Sherpa Samples. It's been a while since I've got to utter those words, but now I get to utter them. Sherpa Samples! Sherpa Samples! So, as I said before, I didn't really have a lot of time to check out some new podcasts, so I listened to some shorter podcasts so we can do a nice short episode. How about that? I've been saying how about that a lot. What am I, Mel Allen? I don't know. We'll talk a little bit about these. First one on the list is called Science Quickly! And it is obviously a science podcast. The episode that I checked out was about bariatric surgery and the stigma of weight loss after having it. Detective Dexter is actually a podcast for the kiddies. Detective Dexter is actually a French bulldog. Solves the mysteries. But it's really cute, and they're really not too long. But I guess when you're riding in the car and you got a little one in there and you want to keep them interested in something, it's definitely something worth checking out. My Unsung Hero, that's a mini podcast from the people who do Hidden Brain. Really interesting. And it's people coming on the podcast to talk about acts of kindness from other people. This was a really touching story. It was from a young lady who, when she was in college, had to walk on crutches due to a spinal injury. And when she was walking in her class, she fell. And she was just very embarrassed and everything. And she was able to get back up and everything. She received just a friendly notification from a stranger to really just make her feel better. And, you know, in spite of all the embarrassment that she was feeling about falling. You really have to listen to the episode to truly appreciate it. I'm probably not doing it justice by describing it, but it was really nice. Really nice to hear little positive stories in podcasts every once in a while, right? Nutrition Diva, that's exactly what you might suspect. It is a podcast about food. And the episode that I checked out on this was, are you putting the right ingredients in your smoothie? I guess the concern was from listeners was if you're mixing different nutrients all together in the blender, are certain things getting wiped out? So the host of the podcast discusses this in the episode. But there's a whole bunch of stuff that they talk about. It's not just smoothies, it's all sorts of food and very scientific approach to it as well. Ramsey's Everyday Millionaires, I guess you can figure out who the host of that podcast is. Yes, financial whiz Dave Ramsey. I know some people like him and some people don't like him. I really haven't listened to enough of his shows to really give an opinion of what I think of his financial advice. I know Nicole Lappin, who hosts Money Rehab, and not that I know her personally, but she's actually been vocal about her opinion of some of the things that he said on his show, and she really does not agree with him. But this episode talked about pre-tax and post-tax investments, so it was a nice little quick episode. If Your Listening was fascinating, had to do with politics and history, and this episode was about how a cancer diagnosis affected the relationship between the United States and Iran. And as you know, there's a couple of things going on with U.S. and Iran. We won't really talk about that because we know we don't do the politics here. r/ is a podcast featuring articles from Reddit. And the episode that I checked out was, I think it was like a compilation of family members taking each other to court. So if you like that sort of stuff and you like Reddit, I've made my feelings very public about Reddit, but I won't go into it here. I'm trying to be very nice. Nature Podcast, that's what it's called. And it talks about all things science and nature in the universe. And the episode that I caught was the feasibility of sending people to Mars. I know people talk about that a lot, and it's been in the news a lot lately too. But this offers some interesting takes on what it would take to send individuals to Mars. Song Exploder, I believe it's from PRX. I always thought that it was from NPR, I'm not sure. But it takes the artists and they basically break down their songs and they tell the history of it and what was behind it. A lot of the songs on there I really didn't know, so I kind of searched through it. And because I'm an 80s guy, there was a song by a band called Crowded House, and they had a big hit with a song called Don't Dream It's Over. And the story is in singer Neil Finn's own words, how the song came together and how they built on it. Really fascinating stuff, really nice. And lastly, this was interesting. I didn't know about this. Arnold's Pump Club. Yes, Arnold as an Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's at to pump you up. With daily motivations, actually. He does talk about a lot of important things that have to do with your health. And I believe he was like the head of the President's Commission on Physical Fitness a long time ago. I guess that was probably post-steroids and pre-heart problems, but no judgment, no judgment. And it seemed like he was kind of selling a couple of items on his show while he was talking about it. But, you know, if people are into working on their bodies, maybe they just want to take them up on that advice. It's getting pretty popular. I think there's like an actual club that you can join to get more of this information and maybe some other stuff. I'm presuming that they're probably selling merchandise as well. So there you have it. 10 podcasts, all under 25 minutes for you to check out and to possibly add to your podcast playlist. So let's pump you up and head on out into the outro.
Listen and subscribe on podcast apps everywhere. And we're on YouTube at Sherpalution. Sorry, no video. You're welcome.
So there you have your mini episode, Rebels. Thanks so much for swinging by and having a listen to these Sherpa Samples, and maybe you'll be checking those out. And as you well know, you can find this podcast on the very podcast app that you might be listening to right now, or on the Sherpalution YouTube page, or even the link to the website where all my podcasts are stored through the wonderful people at Acast. And if you look at the show notes, you can click on there and you can listen to all of the shows right there. How about that? Next week, I think we are doing some true crime. So if you are a true crime fan, or even if you're not, come on back, because I'm sure it's going to be a really mysterious interview. And I hope you enjoy it. And until then, I say to you, Viva la Sherpalution.
Thanks for listening to the Sherpa's Podcast Picks. The podcast is now over. Please disperse and tell everyone about us. As long as they don't put us back in jail. Viva la Sherpalution!